Once is when we let it dry, and then once is when we gloss it for sure. But this is where you're not cheap. You know, this is why you buy like 80 t-shirts at a time and scare ladies to thinking that you're some sort of weirdo. But you want to get kind of all over it. You want to make sure that you're getting in those cracks, you know, kind of drive the cloth into those crevices. You kind of, you know, give it that once more. You also want to understand what kind of stain you've picked. Now, with this kind of stain, this is oil-based. There is water-based stain, which treats the wood a little bit differently, and there's some other godforsaken crappy stain that my father had. I don't remember what the heck it was called. I think it was called Zepp or something, I don't know. But it was horrible, and it said just let it sit there until it soaks into the wood. Well, the problem was they never told you that it was technically a rub stain. You had to rub it in and you had to rub it out. And so when I got done and that thing was cooked on there, it was like a thick putty. It really sucked. So right now you can kind of see this is about the color that this is going to be. You can see how in like along here you can see the grain. I'm trying to get out of the light here a little bit. You can see that grain emerging as being a little darker. The brown's coming through kind of nice. From a distance it's a little darker. And now you can start to see why it is that I wasn't really that concerned about those dark spots in there, because now they start to burnish out nicely and it looks like that's supposed to be there, as opposed to, you know, if I picked all that out, you're not going to get that nice color distinction between the pieces. I'm going to show you one more piece of this, and then I'm going to stain the rest kind of on my own, but I'm going to do the base. I don't know, got a little speckle on that. Do the base cross because I want to show you something here. So with something like this, you can do it one of two ways. You can either have it in your hand, which is fine, or in my case, I'm just going to move a couple of things here real quick, and I'm going to do it on the table. This is another great reason why you want multiple pieces of sheets, you know, so you can just kind of not really have to worry about being horribly careful. I'm probably going to use this sheet at least a half dozen times in various ways. And again, it's because, you know, again, it gets cruddy on there, but it'll dry and I'll stain something else on there and it'll dry and I'll stain something else on there. It's usually pretty fine. The trick though is before we go to the gloss phase, which will be after this all dries, then I want to make sure that I take this one off, put a fresh sheet down, and then make sure before I do that that I really am careful in scrubbing down that table, because I don't want this coming back once I'm ready to gloss. Once I'm done staining this thing, I want everything dry and clean. I don't want to have to contend with excess stain laying around. So one of the reasons why I picked this piece is because it's got lots of edges. Now when you do it on the table there, which a lot of flat pieces you do, what you'll notice is, if you can see just up at the top there, right where that corner's coming in, like right about here, you'll notice that I missed a spot, and that's really hard to see at the angles. So even once you're done, and I also missed right in here, you can kind of see like right there where I'm touching that up. So when you are done with kind of giving it the once over on the table, you want to make sure that you give it the once over kind of open in your hand. Be ready to be dirty, because this is not a cleanly thing that you're getting yourself into, which is again one of the reasons why my wife is a wonderful person who tolerates a lot of stuff that I do. She also tolerates the fact that I end up going through a lot of shirts because I forget that I'm not always dressed for this, and sometimes I'll just go out in the garage and start working on it and ruin something, but she's, yeah, there's another spot right there. So again, that's to get that done. Now the reason why I wanted to do this one is, grab the sheet, the old cloth there, is you'll notice two things. One is that we're taking this stuff off pretty easily. It's coming away pretty nicely, but that you want to make sure that you're getting into all of those grooves. Remember those little spirals that we had up at the top here, this little thing here? You need to get in there and really get that out of there. And you also need, in these little indentations, you need that walked out of there. if that gets stuck there, then you're going to be in trouble, because then it'll harden and then it gets all schmutzy and it gets really, it's just really not going to look the way you want it to look. One of the things that you can't see right now that I'm doing is I'm kind of giving the once over, I'm giving some little extra emphasis to some of these spots, trying to see sometimes if I either didn't sand right or if the wood is a little odd, you'll get these weird spots where the stain comes off in a little bit, but it looks like actually that's just more the grain of the wood than it is me screwing up, so we'll score one for the home team there. But you can notice that the way in which the wood is cut and the angles at which you're kind of seeing here, the flat on here has a very different look and color compared to the side edges. That's completely normal. Grab this next thing here to just kind of hold it a little bit and kind of rub some of this stuff out of there. You'll notice here that this looks a lot more dark and a lot more brown, whereas when I tilt it to the side, you'll see more of this kind of shading and coloring. That's not your fault. That's not something you did wrong, which took me a long time to realize. What it is it's the grain of the wood interacting with the stain. And again, because this is a natural thing, it's got, you know, chambers and areas and pores and stuff that are natural to it being part of a tree. And now that it's a piece of furniture, it still has all of that stuff in it. It's just now, you know, there's something different going in there. Instead of, you know, like food for the tree or water or whatever, it's going to be, you know, stain. So, all right, this is the trick. When you've got these little grooves in here, one of the things I like to do is take a screwdriver, kind of put it over the top of some t-shirt. You know, try to get enough on there so it won't rip through, but not so much that it's too thick to go in there. And I just like to run that around, you know, just try to get in there a little bit more to try to get some of that out. And now you can see on the shirt, here I'll bring that closer, you can see right there, that's what I'm getting out of that hole. So you just kind of keep, you know, keep wrapping it and then kind of getting in that hole. You should see it. It'll still have the stain in there, don't get me wrong, and you don't want to do too much to the outside because you don't want to cut into it. But you do want to make sure that you're, you know, getting in there and getting out as much of that stain as you possibly can, so that it doesn't, again, get too thick in there. Or in some cases, if it won't dry and you gloss over it, now all of a sudden you're picking up a color that's going to start to taint your gloss. When it comes to the stain, pretty much you're okay, you know, painting out of the bucket, so to speak, but I'll show you what I use when we start glossing this thing so that you can get a better sense of what it's supposed to look like, and why it is that, it took me a long time to realize this. It also took me a lot of money screwing up a number of different high quality varnishes to learn, don't paint out of the quart, don't paint out of the bucket, you know, get yourself a little thing to paint out of. To apply rather, I guess I should say. It's not paint, but it feels like you're painting. So in any case, this is me going in here into these grooves to get this out so that happens. Sometimes I'll even take just a little corner of the rag and try to wedge it in there. It doesn't work as well, but it does, you know, if you don't have a screwdriver, or if the screwdriver's just kind of ticking you off a little much. You know, trying really hard not to curse because you see your kids watching this. But you know, this, you know, I've got to kind of get into the edges and of this little thing here. So it's not easy and it is time consuming. So but it's worth it. And the reason why it's worth it is because everything that you do on the front end, even if it takes a little bit longer, you're going to get to enjoy that so much more once it's done. I can't tell you the number of projects I looked at that I did early where I rushed something or I tried to cut a corner and it just ended up pissing me off. Sorry, ticking me off. But at the end of the day, I mean, you're getting a nice piece of furniture. I mean, look at that puppy. That is shiny. You've got some nice, distincting kind of color in there, and you know, kind of works nice. So that's all for now. I'm going to do the rest of these pieces myself, get them into the basement to dry, and then when we get back together, we're going to talk glossing, and hopefully that'll be that next stage that you need.